Set logging level in Spring Boot via environment variable. This follows the same teaching style as your earlier Spring Boot topic. Introduction. In Spring Boot applications, logging is an essential part of debugging, monitoring, and understanding system behavior. During development or deployment, you may want to change the logging level without modifying code or configuration files. For example, increase logs for debugging, debug, reduce logs in production, info or warn, trace detailed execution, trace, suppress unnecessary logs, error only. A very common requirement is how to set logging level using environment variables in Spring Boot. This is especially useful in Docker containers cloud deployments, AWS, Azure, GCP, CI/CD pipelines, Kubernetes environments. This topic helps learners understand what logging levels are, how Spring Boot logging works, how environment variables map to Spring properties, how to configure logging via environment variables, best practices for production usage. This is a very practical Spring Boot configuration concept. What does set logging level via environment variable mean? It means controlling how much log information your application outputs by setting environment variables instead of editing files like application.properties. In simple terms, environment variable means Spring Boot reads it. It means logging level is applied. Example concept. Set environment variable means startup means logging behavior changes. What are logging levels? Logging levels define how detailed the logs should be. Common levels in order of verbosity. Trace, most detailed. Debug, info, warn, error, least detailed. Example concept. Lower level means more logs. Higher level means fewer logs. How Spring Boot configures logging. Spring Boot uses logging frameworks like Logback, default. Log4j2, optional. You usually configure logging levels in logging.level.root equals info. Logging.level.com.example equals debug. Example concept. Property defined means Spring Boot applies logging level. Why use environment variables? Environment variables allow you to change configuration without modifying code or rebuilding the application. Example concept. Same jar file means different environment variables, means different behavior. This is very useful for production deployments, containerized apps, cloud environments, how environment variables map to properties. Spring Boot automatically maps environment variables to configuration properties. Rules. Dots become underscores, property names become uppercase. Example. Logging.level.root equals debug. Becomes. Logging level root equals debug. Example concept. Property means converted to environment variable, means Spring Boot reads it. Basic example. To set root logging level, export logging level root equals debug. Then start the application. Example concept. Environment variable set means Spring Boot reads it, means root logging level becomes debug. Setting package-specific logging level for a specific package. Logging.level.com.example.service debug. Environment variable becomes logging level com example service equals debug. Example concept. Package level logging means more detailed logs only for that package. Full example. Export logging level root, debug. Export logging level com myapp, debug. Example concept. Global logs at info means specific package logs at debug. Using command line. Instead of exporting variables, you can pass them inline. Logging level root equals debug. Gradlu boot run. Or for jar. Logging level root. Debug Java jar app jar. Example concept. Temporary environment variable means applied only for that run. Using Docker. In Docker. env logging level root equals debug. Or in Docker run. Docker run -e logging level root debug my app. Example concept dot. Container environment means Spring Boot. Reads means logging level applied. Using Kubernetes in Kubernetes YAML. env name logging level root value debug. Example concept. Kubernetes environment means passed to container, means Spring Boot config applied. Using application.properties versus environment variables. Application.properties logging level.root equals info. Environment variable logging level root debug. Environment variables override properties. Example concept. Multiple config sources means environment variables take higher priority. Overriding behavior. Spring Boot follows a priority order. Command line arguments. Environment variables. Application.properties. Example concept. Higher priority config overrides lower priority. Dynamic logging. Advanced. Spring Boot also supports changing logging level at runtime via actuator endpoints, actuator loggers logging frameworks. But environment variables apply at startup time. Example concept. Environment variable means static at startup. Actuator means dynamic at runtime. Common use cases. 1. Debugging in production. Logging level com/myapp. Debug. 2. Reduce logs in production. Logging level root. error. 3. Trace specific component. Logging level com/myapp service. Trace. Example concept. Control logging granularity without code changes. Common mistakes. 1. Using dots instead of underscores. Wrong. Logging.level.root equals debug. Correct. Logging level root equals debug 2. Wrong. Logging level root equals debug. Correct. Logging level root debug 3. Wrong package name. Example. Logging level com example equals debug. Must match exact package. 4. Expecting runtime change. Environment variables only apply at startup. Best practice. Best practices include use environment variables for environment-specific config. Keep default levels in application.properties. Override only when needed. Use package-level logging instead of root when debugging. Avoid trace in production unless necessary. Example concept. Default config stable means environment overrides flexible. Advantages: no code change required, works well in cloud and containers, easy to automate, flexible per environment, improves debugging. Challenges: naming conversion confusion, debugging, incorrect environment variables, managing multiple environments, remembering restart is required. By learning this topic, you understand: what logging levels are, how Spring Boot logging works, how environment variables map to properties, how to configure logging externally, priority of configuration sources, best practices for logging. Simple definition. Set logging level via environment variable. The process of configuring Spring Boot logging behavior by defining environment variables that map to logging properties. Final summary. To set logging level in Spring Boot via environment variable, logging level root equals debug. For package level, logging level com example trace. Key ideas. Use uppercase and underscores. Environment variables override application.properties. Apply at startup time. Useful for Docker, Kubernetes, and cloud. Once you understand this, you can control logging behavior in any environment without modifying your application code.